in Telford and Wrekin, the place that we call home, creating a better borough for those who live here, work here and visit, making Telford and Wrekin a special place.
My priorities for the forthcoming year are to work with our contractors Viola, Ida Verde and Balfour Beatty on making our borough cleaner and greener. I will also look to lobby government for more investment into our roads and footpaths and work with Viola on recycling to increase recycling across the borough and look at other opportunities.
My vision for my role as part of the Telford and Wrekin Cabinet is to ensure that we continue to provide the financial bedrock upon which everything else that the council does can be built, whether that's investment in infrastructure, attracting new jobs to the town, good quality homes for residents, or investment into services for residents right across our communities, including services that protect the most vulnerable within our community.
I will be ensuring we deliver on our manifesto, which is to protect, care and invest for all children and young people throughout Telford and Wrekin. It is vital that we protect all our young people and we ensure they have all the educational opportunities that they need. We will be investing heavily in new education facilities to ensure that we can inspire all our young people to reach their true potential. I will be ensuring that I am the voice for all the young people in Telford and Wrekin, and I will ensure that that voice is heard.
I want to focus on quality in the work that we do in relation to housing, transport and infrastructure. I think we've got a fantastic opportunity here to build superb quality homes for the future, to generate a transport system that works for all of our residents and to service that with high quality infrastructure with the very best design. People who live in this town deserve the best, and people who work in this town deserve the best. People who want to locate their businesses here deserve the best. I think we can achieve that if we work together across the council and in partnership with other organisations. Telford's got a bright future. Let's make it happen.
My priorities for the coming year will be to continue to develop our relationships with our voluntary sector and the town and parish councils because they're so important to what we do, to provide a leisure and culture offering to our residents that's affordable and meets their needs, and finally to offer great customer services to everyone out there.
Over the next 12 months, I'll be strengthening partnership working to protect the Ironbridge Gorge World Heritage Site and also working with community groups across the borough to celebrate the rich heritage we have here. We'll also be developing our tourism offer so that we can sell the very best of what Telford and Wrekin has to offer as a great place to live, work and visit.
This year I want to carry on with my Building Bridges project I launched when I was the mayor. So I want to go out to the wider community and build on community cohesion.
My vision for the next year for health and adult social care in Telford and Wrekin is to continue and to further the excellent work that's been done with partners in the area around out of hospital care, and to make sure that people can stay in their own homes and communities. And my second aim will be to ensure there's greater accountability to the people of Telford and Wrekin for health services in this area.
Over the next 12 months, I shall be protecting green spaces and natural environment, working towards tackling climate change and also improving our parks and play areas.
Over the next 12 months, we will begin to implement our manifesto, a vision to protect, to invest and care in Telford and Wrekin, the place that we call home, creating a better borough for those who live here, work here and visit, making Telford and Wrekin a special place.
My priorities for the forthcoming year are to work with our contractors Viola, Ida Verde and Balfour Beatty on making our borough cleaner and greener. I will also look to lobby government for more investment into our roads and footpaths and work with Viola on recycling to increase recycling across the borough and look at other opportunities.
My vision for my role as part of the Telford and Wrekin Cabinet is to ensure that we continue to provide the financial bedrock upon which everything else that the council does can be built, whether that's investment in infrastructure, attracting new jobs to the town, good quality homes for residents, or investment into services for residents right across our communities, including services that protect the most vulnerable within our community.
I will be ensuring we deliver on our manifesto, which is to protect, care and invest for all children and young people throughout Telford and Wrekin. It is vital that we protect all our young people and we ensure they have all the educational opportunities that they need. We will be investing heavily in new education facilities to ensure that we can inspire all our young people to reach their true potential. I will be ensuring that I am the voice for all the young people in Telford and Wrekin, and I will ensure that that voice is heard.
I want to focus on quality in the work that we do in relation to housing, transport and infrastructure. I think we've got a fantastic opportunity here to build superb quality homes for the future, to generate a transport system that works for all of our residents and to service that with high quality infrastructure with the very best design. People who live in this town deserve the best, and people who work in this town deserve the best. People who want to locate their businesses here deserve the best. I think we can achieve that if we work together across the council and in partnership with other organisations. Telford's got a bright future. Let's make it happen.
My priorities for the coming year will be to continue to develop our relationships with our voluntary sector and the town and parish councils because they're so important to what we do, to provide a leisure and culture offering to our residents that's affordable and meets their needs, and finally to offer great customer services to everyone out there.
Over the next 12 months, I'll be strengthening partnership working to protect the Ironbridge Gorge World Heritage Site and also working with community groups across the borough to celebrate the rich heritage we have here. We'll also be developing our tourism offer so that we can sell the very best of what Telford and Wrekin has to offer as a great place to live, work and visit.
This year I want to carry on with my Building Bridges project I launched when I was the mayor. So I want to go out to the more wider community and build on community cohesion.
My vision for the next year for health and adult social care in Telford and Wrekin is to continue and to further the excellent work that's been done with partners in the area around out of hospital care, and to make sure that people can stay in their own homes and communities. And my second aim will be to ensure there's greater accountability to the people of Telford and Wrekin for health services in this area.
Over the next 12 months, I shall be protecting green spaces and natural environment, working towards tackling climate change and also improving our parks and play areas.
Over the next 12 months, we will begin to implement our manifesto, a vision to protect, to invest and care in Telford and Wrekin, the place that we call home, creating a better borough for those who live here, work here and visit, making Telford and Wrekin a special place.
My priorities for the forthcoming year are to work with our contractors Viola, Ida Verde and Balfour Beatty on making our borough cleaner and greener. I will also look to lobby government for more investment into our roads and footpaths, and work with Viola on recycling to increase recycling across the borough and look at other opportunities.
My vision for my role as part of the Telford and Wrekin Cabinet is to ensure that we continue to provide the financial bedrock upon which everything else that the council does can be built, whether that's investment in infrastructure, attracting new jobs to the town, good quality homes for residents, or investment into services for residents right across our communities, including services that protect the most vulnerable within our community.
I will be ensuring we deliver on our manifesto.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Oaken Gates and welcome to the full council meeting of Telford and Wrekin Council. Can I pass over to our speaker, illustrious speaker?
Oh, that's very kind of you.
There you go.
Right, I'd like to introduce Jackie Osmond-Smith, Chair of Telford Christians, to conduct prayers. If you'd like to come to the lectern, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Let us just be still for a moment. Almighty God, to be still is more than to be quiet or to simply keep silence. The holiday season is here, and many of us will take the opportunity to relax and re-energize during the weeks ahead, until we meet again in September. But tonight, still our hearts and minds, and meet with us now, here, in the stillness. And allow us once more to know the satisfaction that just stopping for this moment will bring. In this moment, bring us peace, and then the resolve to use all of our time more effectively in the life of service that we follow. We give thanks for this, our borough of Telford and Wrekin, and all who live and work in our community. In troubled and difficult times for our nation, our desire is to give ourselves in a spirit of reconciliation, friendship, and cooperation to work together to help to bring about a better world here and in Telford for generations to come. Once again, we commit to your care the Mayor, the elected councillors and the officers, and the staff of the Borough Council, Town and Parish Councils, and ask they might work effectively together for the common good, uniting to build a better society, grounded in those core values, beliefs and ideals that we may all share as a diverse community. Invest and secure in all of us, Lord, a real and personal integrity, openness and honesty, a sense of right and wrong, an understanding of justice, an appreciation of learning, and a love of wisdom and truth. Develop in each of us the practice of care and compassion, justice and peace, respect for one another, for the earth, and for our environment. It is right that we thank you for our blessings as we remember with sadness those who are homeless and trapped in poverty, because it should not be. We pray for those agencies and charities which are striving to bring relief to those caught and entangled in poverty and who are suffering financial hardship. We thank you for all those who spend their lives trying to better the lives of others, for those in public service, for all the volunteers, the Good Samaritans of our day, and for those who give themselves to charitable works of service for the good of others. And so we say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today for all of our blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honour of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Grant us wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times. A thirst for justice, a rightness, and an ability to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreement. Give each one of us personal peace, joy in our task, and at the start of the holiday season, we ask that we may all indeed take the opportunity to relax and rest from our labours. Lastly, Father, we pray for this meeting and the agenda that is set before us. Please give an assurance of what is pleasing to you and what would benefit those who live and work in around our beloved borough of Telford and Wrekin. In this we ask for courage and compassion. In the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you. Right. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've received apologies from Councillors Nigel Dugmore, Nathan England,
Andrew Eade, Paul Watling, Jackie Loveridge and Jane Pinter. Are there any other apologies? I apologise for being here. That's noted. Thank you. Right, declarations of interest. Have we had any received in advance of the meeting?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Who was raising their hand?
Speaker, can I just advise you of the passing of one of our former colleagues, Councillor Yvonne Hicks, and her funeral is on Monday. Sorry, the 1st.
Yvonne Hicks.
Yvonne Hicks has passed away.
Do you want a minute silence?
She's proposing a minute silence.
Are you requesting a minute silence? All right. We'll have a minute silence for a passing of one of our former colleagues. Thank you.
We should also recognise the services of Councillor Shirley Bradley, who has also recently passed away.
Thank you, that is noted, yes. Yes, I actually worked with her. Right. Declarations of interest prior to the meeting. I have 2 items here, but you any? No? Right, I understand with reference to the TV licence, question has been asked whether people over 75 should declare an interest, but we have determined that they should not, because it's the same in my view as ratepayers do not have to declare an interest because it applies to everyone. Therefore, our understanding is that it would not apply. The second one is at item 10C, our officers, Jonathan Eatoff and Jonathan Rowe, will leave the room, and Legal Officer Anthea will come up to the lectern, up to the table to deal with that matter. Okay? And then they will rejoin the meeting afterwards if we tell them. Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No? Thank you. Right, the minutes of the previous meeting, 23rd of May 2019. Are they agreed? Proposed? By whom? Seconded? Right, that's proposed and seconded. Agreed? By vote? Thank you. Going to sign the minutes, Mr. Mayor? And the leader to address the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the election in May, the Council has wasted no time in its drive to start delivering our 5 community commitments as part of a wider mission to invest, protect and care for Telford and Wrekin and create a better borough. This has included a review of the Council's budget to deliver significant investment across the borough, £18 million per year in protecting our community's most vulnerable adults and children, including those who are victims and survivors of sexual exploitation and domestic abuse. £50 million into our transport network and borough towns, £35 million into our local schools, including £600,000 investment in the Safer Route to School, and £5 million in our borough town centres. On Future Fit, we've secured the fact-finding visit from the independent referral panel, who are considering our referral on Future Fit's decision on hospital services. In what was a constructive meeting, I reiterate on behalf of us all, I'm sure, this Council's belief that the plans are not in the best interests of this area's health services. On the environment, we've continued our work to protect the environment. We've signed up to the refill scheme as part of our desire to drive down single-use plastics, and later this year we will introduce free household waste food recycling for those homes that want to take part. We will continue to support our communities in every way we can. The Council's Pride Fund is going to continue, with £2,000 allocated to each.
Right, members, could you have respect for the speaker, please? Other people can't hear.
What a great shame they're not wanting to listen about the achievements of this Labour administration, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to support our communities in every way we can. The Council's Pride Fund is going to continue with £2,000 allocated to each ward councillor to spend on projects to benefit your community. And we will continue with the Young Persons Grant Scheme, which to date has awarded over £50,000 to over 100 young people from every postcode area of this borough. All this, and we've managed to deliver a balanced budget for the 8th year in a row, having been forced last year to make budget savings of £7.6 million, bringing the total to £170 million as a result of a Conservative Lib Dem coalition to begin with, followed by the Conservative government. Our financial future is uncertain, but we are planning as best as we can. We are still waiting on the government's green paper, and while no one knows what it will bring, we expect to have to make a further £25 million worth of cuts over the next 3 years. Earlier this month, I attended the Local Government Association's annual conference and found that council leaders across the country, regardless of their political colour, were united in a desire to make a strong case to central government for fairer funding. And I hope that the new Prime Minister, Mr Johnson, will listen to us and address these issues. On the subject of child sexual exploitation and the independent inquiry, earlier this month, Tom Crother, QC, was appointed as chair. Terms of reference for this inquiry were approved, incorporating all amendments requested by the Survivors Committee, including a request to focus on cases prior to 1989. I reiterate the importance of this inquiry and a desire from this administration to work with it. Mr Speaker, returning to Future Fit, it's on this matter that I will defend this council against the criticism it has faced by some Conservative MPs in this county. It is our duty to represent the people who serve and work in our borough, and also those who work in our local NHS. This is not a council that is just complaining and holding things up. This is a council that has been rightly challenging the proposed decisions and the way forward for years. This is a council that is also delivering practical solutions. We've helped the Hospital Trust refurbish 4 homes on the site of the PRH to help recruit junior doctors, and that is now paying off. The offer of this free accommodation to graduates has already attracted a cohort of junior doctors for the next year. Another 2 houses are now being worked on to bring the total up to 6. Finally, I would like to issue my thanks and congratulations to those who contribute to making Telford and Wrekin a special place. To the Armed Forces who helped us mark the first free family event in Southwater to mark Armed Forces Day. To our record number of volunteers, nearly 1,500 of them, who work hard right up and down the borough, who were recognised by the National Volunteers Week last month. And to everyone who brought us the Telford Balloon Fiesta, which has attracted a massive 50,000 people from all over the country to our award-winning park. And finally, to the Council's own cleaning team, named Cleaning Team of the Year by the Association of Building Cleaners Direct Services Providers, who received their award from the House of Commons. Well done. There's so much to be proud of.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the Mayor now to discuss his announcements.
Thank you, everybody. Right, since becoming Mayor, the last couple of months have been extremely busy, as you can imagine. And I place on record my sincere thanks to Amric, my able deputy, for attending various events upon my behalf over the same period. All the events that I've been asked to attend are important, and since the end of May I've promoted and attended various events which namely are the National Volunteers Week, which has already been mentioned by our leader, Shropshire Chamber of Commerce Business Awards 2019, the Shropshire Homes School Sports Festival, where all the schools got involved up in Shrewsbury. We had the Crucial Crew at Telford College, which is so important for our youngsters to learn all sorts of safety issues, not just for water, but fire and all the other essential things like that. But the important ones is that my visit to Homer Lake Primary School, who received a national award from the IMLT for their work, the children raising awareness about debt, loan sharks and money management. And they deserved everything that they got. They got a substantial amount of money from the IMLT, and plus a very prestigious award which was national. I also attended the 1 Million Mentors launch at Telford College. This is an initiative in honour of the passing of Joe Cox. And the Great Get Together is an initiative to have 1 million students matched up with 1 million mentors, of which Telford College is promoting to support their students with the skills that they will need in the future, both for further education and the workplace. I also attended the Telford African Caribbean Resource Centre celebrating Windrush Day on the 22nd of June, the 71st anniversary of the docking of the MV Empire Windrush. Such an important event, and I was very happy to attend, and I met so many lovely people who are not direct descendants of those that came to us in 71 years ago. Finally, I was delighted and honoured to welcome Princess Alexandra to the town last Friday, and she and all of us pay tribute to our wonderful volunteers who have made such a valuable contribution in our place that we all call home. And I put down a place that the wonderful volunteers right across the sector were there, and they received their awards, and they're very happy to receive them from Princess Alexandra. But it's busy time, and I look forward to the next couple of months. And as I say, if anybody out there that needs my help or come down to open anything, but the door is always open, as I always say. So thank you, everybody.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, we now move on to public questions. I'd like to invite Gemma Everson to read out her question, please, to Councillor David Wright.
With regard to the Shorebirch East site, could the Cabinet Member for Development clarify whether the extant planning permission granted by the Government for industrial development in 1991 can override any redesignation in the local plan?
Thank you. Councillor David Wright.
Thank you, Speaker. Can I thank Gemma for her question and for participating in tonight's council meeting. In 1991, this land was granted consent by the Secretary of State under 7.1 of the New Towns Act 1981 for development for employment use, and that consent remains in place to this day. Any redesignation in the local plan would not change that consent in any way.
Thank you for that. Could I now ask Mr. Darren Bailey to ask his question of David Wright, please?
Thank you. Would the Cabinet Member for the Development confirm that the government agency, Homes England, is pursuing this council, who is acting as its agent, to sell the Shorebirch East site for development?
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. And can I also thank Darren for coming along tonight and taking part in the council meeting. It's an important part of our local democracy that local people can come and ask us questions directly as Cabinet members. Under the Telford land deal, the council is marketing the site on behalf of Homes England. I think it's worth saying that the Land Development Board is a tripartite organisation. It involves the council, the local enterprise partnership and Homes England. Prior to disposal of any site, consent is required from all three partner agencies.
Thank you. Moving on then, I'd like to ask the Leader whether the Cabinet has any comments on matters covered in the Cabinet report. You're happy to take questions, right? Are there any questions on Points of clarification only. Yes? Councillor Scott.
That's very sharp, Arnold. Yeah, I just wanted to ask the leader.
Which question?
Well, it's about. Bear with.
Page number
10.1.
10.1.
The boundary review for Newport.
Sorry? Not on the agenda? No. It's later on.
I can wait till later on. That is not a problem.
Okay. Yeah, I'm advised that it's later on. So
I can happily wait then. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else? No more questions, move on. Right, recommendations from Cabinet. Councillor Lee Carter proposed the recommendation. Just clarify which one we're on. Which page? Okay, yeah, I've got it on here. All right, carry on.
I'd like to move the recommendations A to F, please.
Seconded.
That's been moved and seconded. Any debate? It's questions only on key decisions, I'm advised. Any? Is that right?
We've moved on then.
We've moved on.
So it's now.
Where are we now then?
All those in favour. Just on all those in favour. It's been moved and seconded.
It's rubbish.
It's been moved and seconded.
Been moved and seconded. Move on. Thank you. Do we take a vote on that? We'll take a vote on that, shall we? All those in favour? Thank you. How am I doing? Hey, God. We're now on to 9.2, Financial Management Report. Councillor Carter.
I'd like to move the recommendation, please.
Seconded.
Right. Any debate? Right, agreed? Excellent, that's carried, thank you. Right, Telford Wrekin Council 4-year strategy, 9.3, invite Councillor Sean Davis to propose the recommendation.
Mr Speaker, I know that this will be uncontroversial because this is the Labour Party manifesto that only a couple of months ago we had an endorsement of those people who voted. This Labour group having the best number of councillors since 1997, a plan to protect, care and invest to create a better borough of Telford and Wrekin, and this report enshrines that Labour Party manifesto that got so much community support into the council policies which we will pursue over the next 4 years. And just so it's a matter of public record, Mr Speaker, this is very much the minimum that this administration will achieve over the next 4 years. We're looking forward to achieving this and so much more.
All right, thank you. Any comment? Right. Do you approve the recommendation that we approve the programme, review the progress to date in delivering the commitments? Is that agreed? Thank you. It's done. Right. Item 10, recommendations from boards and committees. Yeah. Councillor Concepta-Cassar, would you like to propose? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Before I begin, just a quick thank you to the outgoing chair of the Boundary Review Committee and the outgoing committee, and to the officers who have worked so hard so far. So those of you who have been watching this will be aware that in early 2018 there was a request from Newport Town Council to undertake a community governance review. If you have a look at the timetable as set out on page 109, you will note that there have been some changes to this, namely so that this reported to the Boundary Review Committee on the 7th of February 2019, that the Boundary Review Committee wished to adjourn in order to undertake a site visit as was requested in order to inform the decision. This took place on the 21st of February 2019, which meant that the Boundary Review Committee meeting on the 7th of March 2019 it took place then, so it wasn't possible to report to full council in February as originally anticipated. There were 2 periods of consultation. First on draft recommendations took place between June and August 2018, and the second on final recommendations took place between November 2018 and 2019. Draft proposals based upon the request for the community governance review suggested changing the boundary of the South Ward of Newport Parish to match that of the Borough Ward of Newport South and East. The minutes of the meeting in October, where this was discussed, indicates that members were concerned that despite the changes affecting Chetwynd, Aston and Woodcote, residents of that parish had not been properly consulted. So the Boundary Review Committee decided to reject these recommendations and undertake further consultation on proposals that there would be no changes. When the first consultation took place, it only generated 4 responses, 3 of which were in favour of the draft proposals and 1 against. The second consultation then generated 12 responses, which were split evenly, 6 for and 6 against. The Boundary Review Committee considered all consultation responses and the legislative requirements that community governance within the area under review should reflect the identities and interests of the community in that area and be effective and convenient, taking into account matters such as community cohesion, size, population, boundaries, effective governance and identities. The Council's response to the consultation responses used those legislative headings. These are set out, if you have a look, on pages 107 to 108, paragraphs 5.5 to 510. I won't go through these in detail at present, but I will draw your attention to some areas, namely that the potential growth in population was submitted as a reason for change, but the Council felt that there was inconclusive evidence to support a change in the boundary on supposition as to where the increased population would like to go for community services. Additionally, Chetwynd, Aston and Woodcote Parish confirmed that it was willing to welcome new residents into the community and indicated that it would be able to provide for those residents' needs at a local level. It was suggested that it made sense to align the parish boundaries with the borough ward boundaries, but there are many areas within the borough where boundaries differ, and there is no evidence to suggest that this has a negative impact upon effective governance. After considering all of the consultation responses and undertaking a site visit, it was agreed by the Boundary Review Committee that there was no strong evidence to support any change being made to the parish boundaries. Thank you.
You moving the recommendation that the Boundary Review Committee recommend that no change should be made to the Newport Town Council, Chetwynd, Aston and Woodcote parish boundary.
Based on the information I have, I move.
You move that. Is that seconded? That's seconded. Councillor Scott, you wanted to comment on this?
I did, please, Chair. Mr. Speaker, should I say. I think the figures just given out there by Councillor Cassar do suggest that not a lot has gone into this. We started off with 4 people discussing it, and then we had 12, 6 on either side, 2 of which were me. So I know not a lot's gone on, but I think one of the crucial things on this one is that when the site visit was made, many people, not enough, changed their mind because they saw what it really is happening in Newport, in this area, and they can see for themselves in the future people living there will say they live in Newport. We've had people come to us during our own petitions that we've done for this particular boundary, wanting to sign it and also wanting smart water, living on Wright Avenue, which is in this boundary, but thinking they live in Newport. So what I would really ask, and if it's not too late, that it isn't decided this evening, and that the Cabinet do what the Boundary Committee did, and go and have a look at this area, and you'll see, I can see you're shaking your head. But if you did, you would say, I'll just finish the point. If you did come and see this, you'll see that you are saving up problems for the future for this council.
I'm advised it's for the boundary people to deal with, not Cabinet decision.
Well, all I can say is, as an individual and as a councillor for Newport,
your point is taken.
That it wasn't sufficient and it'll be a wrong decision. Thank you.
Councillor Ian Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a previous member of the Boundary Committee that have gone through this in detail and considered every aspect, I feel that Councillor Scott is sadly misinformed. We considered every possible response, we considered every possible view, and as by a majority, we agreed that there should be no change. Therefore, I formally move that we take the vote, Chairman. Sorry, Speaker.
It's been moved that we take the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation as read out? All right, that's agreed. Thank you. Right. Right. Councillor Jang and Scott.
Yeah, that can be recorded. Yeah.
They're recorded as against. Okay. Moving on 10.2, Audit Committee, 30th of May. Invite Councillor, oh, he's not here. Who's covering for Paul Watling? Right, Councillor Charles Smith, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Deputy Chair of the committee, it's my duty now to move the report. It was considered by the Audit Committee in May 2019, and there's two elements to it. One, to note the update of the work on the Council with regards to anti-fraud and corruption activity, and the second, to approve the updated policy which is attached to Appendix 1 in the report. I don't think I need to say any more, Chair, because it's all in the report. I move the recommendations.
Who's seconding? Seconded, Councillor Coldip-Sahota. Right, following any debate? Any debate? Recommendation put to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried, thank you. Right, oh, this is 10.3 where Mr Etov and Mr Rowe wish to leave, and Anthea, you are invited to... Anthea Lowe, you're invited to the table, the top table. Right, right. Right, pages 133 to 136. I invite Councillor Sean Davis to propose the recommendation.
Can he present the report first?
Sorry?
Can he present the report?
Oh, you've got to present it first. All right then. Ms Lowe will present the report and then we'll discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Following the departure of the Managing Director, it's necessary to make alternative arrangements that the Council's business efficacy is not affected and that our statutory functions can be met. The report before you sets out those alternative arrangements. There are 3 recommendations for Council to consider. The first is to designate the Director of Customer, Neighbourhoods and Wellbeing Services as the head of paid service. The second is to appoint the Monitoring Officer as Returning Officer and Electoral Registration Officer. And the third is to amend the Council's constitution and pay policy to reflect those arrangements. Unless there's any questions, Mr Speaker, that's all I have to say.
Right, thank you very much. I invite Councillor Sean Davis to propose the recommendations.
Propose.
Councillor Richard Overton to second. That's done. Any debate on the recommendations on page 133? Will you stand then, please, if you can?
Noting that on A, are we likely to see national advertising for the position of Managing Director of this authority?
That's my understanding, yes. Oh, do you have an answer?
Yeah, I'll pick this up because this was discussed at Personnel Committee, which, as all members know, is a politically balanced committee where all members, all groups are represented. And I can confirm that the position will be nationally advertised. It has already been nationally advertised, and it will be further nationally advertised later on this month.
Right. Unless there's no other debate, no. Recommendations 212223 on page 133. They've been moved and seconded. Are they agreed? Yeah. All right, thank you. Oh, you're going. Oh, shall we invite them back in? Yeah. All right. Okay, that was agreed as recommended. Right, item 11, invite Councillor Sean Davis to propose the recommendations ref the Health and Wellbeing Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These recommendations follow on from the last agenda item, which deal with some minor alterations in respect of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and also granting of delegated authority to the Chief Operating Officer following the departure of the Managing Director. In respect to the Health and Wellbeing Board, there are some changes which has been consulted with the Chair of the Constitution Committee, who has agreed with these proposed changes, and also in respect of further delegations to the Chief Operating Officer, I propose.
Councillor Richard Overton, are you seconding? Yeah, thank you very much. Any debate on the recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 on page 137? No, thank you. Can we take a vote then? All those in favour? That's agreed, thank you. Questions? Where's my questions? That's a motion. That's a motion. That's a motion. Questions? These ones?
Yes.
Okay. Right, the first question that we've had tabled, Councillor Bill Tomlinson. If you could read out your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Cabinet Member for Development explain for the benefit of residents why a motion requesting a review of the local plan for the Shorebirch East site to be redesignated as green space was refused?
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Speaker, and can I thank Councillor Tomlinson for his question. His proposed motion was asking the Council to express an opinion on the next review of the local plan insofar as it relates to the Shorebirch East site. He was proposing in his motion that the Council would decide that when a review was undertaken, the Shorebirch East site should be redesignated as green space. However, a local plan review must be undertaken in accordance with procedures which are set out clearly in legislation. These procedures involve stages of consultation and consideration of representations, and of course an independent examination conducted by a planning inspector. All of these stages have to be completed before the Council is in a position to adopt the final version of the plan. Any review of the local plan starts with information gathering, of course, and evidence gathering by Council officers. This is a crucial stage in the local planning process, because without a strong evidence base for any draft changes to the local plan, changes that are proposed are unlikely to be upheld during the independent examination stage. If, at the outset of any review process, the Council was to declare, through such a motion that Councillor Tomlinson was proposing, that it would undertake to determine a position on a land site before that review process had got underway, and that the site should be redesignated as green space, it would be fettering its discretion in relation to the local planning process, which has to run its course as per any review put in place by a local authority.
Thank you. Supplementary? Yeah, please do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for that answer, and also for him coming out to meet up with the residents on the 2nd of September to hear their views and concerns that they have about that particular site. Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Sorry. Just wondered why you were chatting. Sorry. The last thing I want to do is fetter anybody, Speaker, as you can well imagine. But it is welcome that he's coming out to meet with everybody. And I think, as a general point, I would like to ask, could he tell residents and could he tell everybody here what sort of actions and what sort of things would a local authority do to help engage with the local population if such a review of the local plan comes about? Sometimes such consultations as these sometimes gets overlooked by residents for whatever means we try to communicate. Can you let the Council know just how that communication, how that review would likely to take place? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that supplementary question. The local authority is required on a 5-year cycle to review its local plan process. It's the administration's intention to come back later on this year with a paper to discuss how we would conduct a local plan review. As part of this process, we would clearly want to talk with local businesses, local community organisations and indeed local residents. So we would want to strongly publicise the opportunities for local residents to come forward during any review process to discuss sites which are in their local neighbourhood, or indeed any site which is in existence across the local authority area. And I'm very pleased to be coming out to meet with himself and local residents in September to talk through how we can get a community partnership together to support the redevelopment of this site. But at the moment, obviously, it's designated and will remain to be designated for employment use within the local plan.
Thank you for that. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Karen Blundell to ask her a question of the same person.
Thank you, Speaker. Given that Shorebirch and Dothill wards have local nature reserves and one in Apley Castle is imminent, and that Ighton upon the Wold Moors has been designated as a site of special interest, would the Cabinet Member for Development agree that if there is any development on the Shorebirch East site, it must be as green as possible and sympathetic to the surrounding areas?
Well, can I thank Councillor Blundell for her question? And yes, of course, I agree that any development should be as green as possible and sympathetic to the surroundings. As I explained earlier, both to members of the Council and to members of the public, this site is owned by Homes England, and we have the benefit of a Section 7.1 consent for employment use, and it's reflected in the local plan designation as an employment site, E28. If the site does come forward for development for employment use, I'm sure that Homes England and the Land Board will want to make sure that any redevelopment is as green as possible and obviously reflects on issues relating to local nature concerns.
Do you have a supplementary? No supplementary, thank you. Call upon Councillor Karen Tomlinson to ask her question, please.
Thank you. Would the Cabinet Member for Development agree, as the Shorebirch Island is a gateway to Telford, any development within the surrounding area must help promote Telford's green credentials?
Thank you, David.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And again, can I thank Councillor Tomlinson for her question relating to the Shorebirch site. We're having a good run round this issue this evening, aren't we? Both from members of the public and from local councillors. That's a really good thing so that we can clarify the situation in relation to that site and move forward as positively as possible. I do agree that the site's in a very prominent position for people driving into and out of Telford, and it's important that the site is well designed and is a showcase site for Telford. As I mentioned in my previous answer, Homes England is keen to engage both with the local authority in terms of making the planning process work in relation to this site. And we want to work closely to make sure that this site is sustainable in terms of any development that comes forward. And I hope we can promote the Council's green credentials along with the green credentials of any future employment user in that particular area.
Councillor Blundell, do you have Tomlinson even? Too many Karens.
Thank you. Following discussions between Councillors Karen Blundell, Councillors Bill Tomlinson and officers of the Council in the past, could the Cabinet Member for Highways indicate when work will commence on the Shorebirch Gateway Island to celebrate the borough's green spaces?
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm happy to answer on behalf of the Cabinet Member with responsibility for highways, considering that I've answered every other question this evening. I may as well, I suppose. So work's already commenced, I understand, with the planting of bulbs on in the location. In part, this is due to the hard work of local ward members who've put their ward member funds forward for this purpose, and we're really appreciative of that, and I'm sure the local community will be too. I can't confirm a further start date at this point at tonight's meeting, but I know that officers are in discussions with an artist in respect of the proposed butterfly and flower sculpture, which identifies and connects with local nature reserve activities. And I'm keen to ensure that we continue to work in partnership so that we can enhance both the informal and formal open space in this local area so that we can see it as a really positive gateway, as I've said, in and out of Telford. And I'd like to thank local councillors for their positive approach in this and the partnership working that they're keen to do.
Thank you. We now move on to motions. I call upon Councillor Stephen Bentley to propose his motion, please.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This Council notes with concern the recent statement by the Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury and Atcham concerning his wish to see the authority either merged with Shropshire or completely abolished. This Council completely opposes both of these scenarios, and whilst recognising the benefits of joint working and cooperation with Shropshire Council, We also recognise the importance of local accountability in democracy. Consequently, this Council collectively resolves to oppose any plans to abolish or merge by all and any means possible.
Councillor Carter, do you wish to second?
I'd a second. I can reserve my right to speak a little late. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we have an amendment. I call upon Councillor Gilly Reynolds to propose the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I wish to propose an amendment to the motion submitted by the member for Edgemond and Arkle Magna. Firstly, I'd like to thank both Councillor Bentley and Councillor Carter for proposing the motion this evening. The comments expressed by the Conservative Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury and Atcham are deeply troubling, and this motion goes some way to allaying those fears that residents expressed with such conviction during this May's local elections. However, I feel we need to go further. This is not the first time, and I fear not the last time, we will be harassed with the warped and conspiratorial views of this Conservative MP. His conviction to abolish our council is wholly undemocratic, unrealistic and undeniably stupid. And may I just add, the last time I checked, the MP for Shrewsbury does indeed represent the Shrewsbury constituency, although his parliamentary declarations do seem to suggest otherwise. If anything, his apparent fascination for Saudi Arabia and Morocco, rather than the delights of Pride Hill Shopping Centre, are clear for all to see. He seems to spend more time dealing with the Arabian Peninsula and the privatisation of global healthcare there than listening to the residents of his own constituency. Importantly, every time we stand united on the important issues facing our borough, Conservative MPs from across Shropshire want to see our council abolished. When we marched for our hospital, the future of our A&E, Shropshire North's MP called for us to be abolished. When Telford and Wrekin Conservative MPs voted for over £100 million of cuts to this very council, we knew their loyalties lay elsewhere with Westminster and not the residents we represent. And again, we've seen Shrewsbury's MP continuing his attacks on the residents of Telford and Wrekin when they asked us to take the lead and stop the proposed closure of our A&E. I'm sure Councillor Carter will agree with me. Ambitions to merge and swallow up services does not necessarily provide a greater result for our residents. Proposals to centralise both police and fire under the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner is another example of an unapologetic power grab. The amendment therefore demands an apology from the Shrewsbury MP and sets out our conviction to continue our programme as local decision makers to invest, care and protect in the place we call home.
Thank you. Call upon Councillor Eileen Collier to second the amendment.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I would like to second the amendment proposed by Councillor Gilly Reynolds. During the recent local election campaign, one of Labour's key pledges was to fight any merger with struggling Shropshire Council. The residents of Telford and Wrekin that I spoke with about this issue were adamant that any form of merger would be a bad thing for everyone in Telford and Wrekin. Judging by the results of the election, it would be reasonable to assume that the vast majority of people in our borough are strongly against the idea of a merger of any nature. A number of residents have expressed concerns to me that the people of Telford are made to feel like the poor relative of those in Shrewsbury, and the consistent drone of the Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury and Atcham and his very strange obsession with the merger just goes to reinforce this belief. The fact that this MP thinks that he alone knows what is best for our borough, added to this pure lack of knowledge about what the people actually think, shows not only a pure arrogance, but also very bad judgment on his part. Daniel Kaczynski continues to call for a merger. Shropshire Council have said they do not want a merger. Telford and Wrekin Council have said they do not want a merger. And the people of Telford and Wrekin Council have said they do not want a merger. Daniel Kaczynski alone is the only person calling for a merger. This amendment clarifies the position of this council. This has dragged on for far too long, and the MP for Shrewsbury and Atcham has continually tried to undermine Telford and Wrekin Council, even though he is not an MP in Telford or the Wrekin. It must stop, and he must apologise for his appalling behaviour towards this authority and the people it serves. May I suggest that the Conservative Party locally strongly encourage the MP for Shrewsbury and Atcham to prioritise his own constituency and focus on getting to work for the people he is supposed to be serving, and to leave the Borough of Telford and Wrekin in the capable hands of those elected by its residents. So, Mr Speaker, for those reasons, I second this motion.
Thank you. We're now going to have a debate on the amendment. Okay. Anybody wish to comment? Councillor Bentley, you actually have the right of reply.
At the end of the debate.
At the end of that debate.
At the end of the debate on the amendment.
Right, Councillor Scott, and then Councillor...
Thank you. Just a brief note on this, really. I fully support the amendment, and I would fully support the original motion. It's really good to see that everyone in this council agrees on this one, but whoever writes to him, can they please tell him that we are Telford and Wrekin Council, because he always refers to us as Telford Council. If we can't get that one simple thing right, how can we possibly take him seriously on any other part of it? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bill Tomlinson.
Yes, thank you, Mr Speaker. Yes, I think this goes hand in hand, really, with what happened with the CCGs and the merger of the two of them. It takes the voice away of Telford and Wrekin people by a proposed merger, so I'm absolutely vehemently against it, and I support the amendment. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment? All right, Councillor Bentley, your right of reply on the amendment.
Speaker, well, obviously I'm more than happy to support the amendment, and I'm glad that everybody seems to a willingness to support the original motion as well. I do have a couple of comments. The word trouble...
This is about the abolition of this council. Right, that's the... Sorry, Councillor Carter, too late, he's had his reply. Right, all those in favour of the amendment? That's agreed, thank you. That now becomes the substantive motion. Now, Councillor Carter, you may speak, of course, on the substantive.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I wanted to speak on this particularly because the leader of the council will remember, I'm sure, that at the first cabinet meeting of this new year, after the AGM, the leader of our side, Councillor E, was unable to attend, and I attended in his place. And on the agenda was this very item that they put forward to say that they did not want this to be supported. And if you remember, Councillor Davis, I commented, and this was before the statement was made more recently by Daniel Kaczynski, and I didn't know what he was going to be saying. I was speaking from my own behalf. I commented at that meeting that Daniel Kaczynski, on a number of occasions where I attended MPs' briefings with my hat on as chair of the Fire Authority, has all interfered and then brought it back to the same subject. Well, Telford and Wrekin should be part of Shropshire. And I have made my comments to him and statements to him face to face and said, no, go away. And I say the same thing to him now. And so it is a fact that without the consent of the two peoples, this wouldn't go. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to comment before we go to the vote? Right, the motion as amended. All those in favour, please show. Yes, that's unanimous, I think. Thank you. Right, I now call upon Councillor Carolyn Healy to propose her motion. Thank you.
Mr Speaker, I represent the Ironbridge Gorge ward, a place that we rightly celebrate as the birthplace of industry, where innovation and creativity help to shape the modern world. But we now know that the industrialisation of our planet is having a catastrophic effect on our climate, and this threatens our very existence. The special report on global warming, published by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in October 2018, describes the enormous harm a 2-degree rise in global temperatures would cause. The report calls for ambitious action from national and subnational authorities, citizens and the private sector. For this reason, this Council is declaring a climate emergency, recognising the seriousness of this issue and the urgency of taking action now. We also recognise that plastic pollution is seriously harming ecosystems at a time when species are struggling to adapt to climate change. The manufacture of single-use plastics also contributes to carbon emissions, which is why we have included our commitment to remove single-use plastics from our operations during the term of this administration and to support the Plastic Free Communities campaign as part of this motion. This Council is making a commitment to achieve carbon neutrality from the operations and activities that are under the Council's control. We are further committing to engage with residents, businesses, fellow public sector organisations and partners to work together with the aspiration for the whole borough to be carbon neutral by 2030. And we want to do this in a way that protects jobs and does not disadvantage our most vulnerable residents. We need to take people with us on this journey. We've started to make progress. We were one of the first local authorities to install a commercial solar farm, which is generating 4 megawatts of clean electricity per annum. We are protecting and continuing to invest in significant areas of green space, which provide green lungs and offer potential for carbon capture as part of offsetting the emissions that we cannot influence. We are close to completing the conversion of 20,000 traditional streetlights to LED, reducing the quantity of CO2 being emitted by 1,887 tonnes per annum. We're fitting low-carbon technologies in 27 public buildings across the borough. We're achieving a recycling target for household waste in excess of 54%, with residual waste diverted from landfill and therefore not producing methane. As a renewable energy source, we're using the waste as a renewable energy source and working with our contractor to reduce this even further with the introduction of food waste collections from September. We provide grant funding via our Business Energy Efficiency Programme to support businesses increase their energy efficiency. And we continue to establish policies in the local plan that promote more cycling and walking and sustainable drainage measures, and ensuring all new developments adopt and implement travel plans that support sustainable forms of transport. But of course, there is much more to be done, and we recognise that we cannot address these 2 significant issues alone. Climate change affects everyone, and we want to work with everyone and anyone who is supportive of this agenda. Within the Council, we will work cross-party, and we will also establish a broad partnership of public and private sector organisations, community groups and individuals to develop and deliver the actions needed to become carbon neutral across the borough. At the start, I referred to the innovation and creativity that emanated from the Ironbridge Gorge in shaping the modern world. I believe that we still have the creativity and innovative spirit to do that again in our borough and ensure that we play our part in addressing this greatest of threats. I move the motion.
Thank you for that peroration. I now invite Councillor Hilda Rose to second.
Thank you, Speaker. I support this motion to declare a climate emergency and to support the Plastic Free Communities campaign. Climate change is happening now and urgent action is needed. We are already seeing extreme weather events and the impact of this is having on residents in our borough. In the line with the IPCC report, we are setting a date for carbon neutral by 2030. This is 20 years earlier than the government has set as their own target, showing our ambition and commitment. Clearly, if there is an opportunity to deliver this sooner, we will. Government has set a target of 2050 for the nation for the carbon neutral. We would like the government to be more ambitious, and we call upon this government and our MPs to support us and make the powers and resources available to enable us to tackle the global threat. The production of single-use plastic also contributes to carbon emissions, as well as plastic pollution having a significant impact on the environment, for example. 8 million pieces of plastic pollution go into the ocean each day. There are 5,000 items of plastic pollution for every mile of beach in the UK. Single-use plastic bottles account for 40% of all litter by volume. 1 in 4 fish caught for human consumption now contains plastic, meaning that the average of seafood consumed in the UK ingests 11,000 plastic particles every year. These issues are compounded by the fact that while the plastic can remain in the environment for more than 150 years, 50% of the plastic produced is used only once. Because of this, pollution caused by single-use plastic has become an increasingly topical issue. At the Council, we have already made progress with reducing and removing single-use plastics, such as signing up to the Support Refill, a national campaign that promotes refill stations, where people are welcome to water bottles with drinking water free. We currently have 5 refill stations in the council buildings. Banning the use of balloons at council-run events, stopping the use of single plastic cups and water bottles by the council meetings, removing plastic stirrers and straws at the CAFGO, using takeaway cups with a fully compostable plant-based liner of CAFGO. To further this, we want to work with local champions and groups that are already doing some great work across the borough, such as the Sustainable Newport, Refill Madeley, Transition Town Centre, Wrekin Housing Trust and Telford Shopping Centre, to name a few.
Thank you very much.
Yes, by this we can address the issues of plastic, of climbing, working together.
Excellent, thank you, thank you. Gordon Bennett. Right. Councillor Sahota, I've got you listed to speak, but I have to take the amendment first, and then we have then you can speak. Okay. All right. Councillor Thomas Jank, you wish to move an amendment or amendments?
Members, I very much welcome this motion brought forward by Councillor Healy. We feel this declaration has been coming a long time, and it's fantastic to see climate emergency on the agenda this evening, so thank you very much. We do believe, however, that this carbon neutrality target of 2030 is not ambitious enough, and we'd like to seek to amend this motion this evening. Members, this is an emergency. An emergency. That requires urgent action. More urgent action, the better. Climate change is the single biggest existential threat to our very species. It's here now, right now, on our doorstep. This generation faces the biggest fight of our lives, and our children and grandchildren are expecting us, the elected representatives in this chamber, to pick up the baton and fight for them. We must take the most urgent action possible, together, as one body. And we are 11 years away from the target in the original motion, 11 years, by which time it may already be too late. We need to be much, much bolder. We could do much better, which is why we're asking for a carbon neutrality target of at least 2025. Neighbouring councils such as Wolverhampton and Cannock have already got targets of 2028, and we should aspire to be better than this. We are better than them councils. We are better. Some say this target's not realistic, of course, hindered by financial obstacles and the like. And I say to members here, allowing future generations to suffer at the hands of climate change, we can put no cost on that, no price on that. If there's enough will amongst this chamber, we can succeed and meet these demands. Climate change does not care for what party we belong to, what political ideologies we adhere to. It's in front of us now, and we need to put the climate emergency and climate change at the very front of every policy that this council brings forward from here on in. We're calling on this authority to do more across the spectrum of the borough with regards to promoting and encouraging residents, partners and stakeholders to do more with single-use plastic consumption. We shall be leading the way on the prevention of poisoning our lands and our oceans, setting the example and not just doing it as a local authority but as an entire community. Emergency situations call for the most bravest and ambitious decisions, and we call upon this chamber and the MPs for Telford and for the Wrekin to come together at this most critical time and prepare for the war on climate change. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bill Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I definitely would love to second this amendment. We are both grateful for the Labour Group for bringing this motion forward, but we would like to have principally the bolder challenge of bringing it by 2025. Today, you couldn't have picked a better time to put this motion with the weather as it is. It's boiling hot, and this is what we've had recently. It's what we're going to have more of in the future. And I just hope today that the worst effects that everybody in this room has had is sticky, nicky, nacky news, because it has been bad. Now, we're lucky in that the temperatures down in the southeast are about 10 degrees hotter than this, and on continental Europe they're even hotter. This isn't just going to go away. Thankfully, it is tomorrow. It looks like it's going to be cooler, but it's going to come back again and again and again. And it does create deaths. It does create deaths in areas where people can't be looked after properly. So climate change, it is an emergency. And as my colleague here said, our kids, in fact, it's a young girl, isn't it, from Sweden that's been going around with eviction. It sometimes takes a child, it takes a young person to look at this and say, hang on a minute, where is my future? Now, I know the target of 2025, some people is unrealistic and it's bold, but if we fail, isn't it better that we fail trying than to not try at all? I know it's going against the original motion, but I earnestly wish people would accept the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very much. Right, I now have 5 speakers, Sahota, Burford, Bentley, Cassar and Gilly Reynolds. So we'll start off with Councillor Sahota. We are talking about the amendment. Right?
Well, no, I'm not going to talk on the amendment. Even though I agree with what he says mostly, it's just 5 years there. But I like to stick with the original motion of 2025, is it? 30, sorry, yeah, 2030. So I just first of all, I more or less agree what Thomas says actually, and I had to cut off my speech here now after he's spoken. First of all, I like to begin by thanking Councillor Caroline Healy for bringing this motion. It is a very topical, it is very important to this meeting. Climate change is not a fake news. It is a fact. It is here. It is happening. It is happening today. If we all have a look outside of what's happening, it is creeping on us slowly and inexorably while we are asleep. And we need to wake up to it, like Councillor has already said. This issue is not just for our town or region or the country, but it is for the world, Mr. Speaker. While we do our bit as a local authority, it is the national government that needs to take a lead on it. We can do our best to introduce carbon footprints by introducing various local policies, and it's the national government that needs to push on this agenda so we can, do our bit as well. I hate to say this, Mr. Speaker, but our brand new shining Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson, who is bringing in the golden age, is not bothered about this issue at all. And I've been looking into his record all day and what he's been up to. As a climate change, he is a climate change is concerned, he's a well and truly with President Trump. And we all know what President Trump thinks about global warming, Mr. Speaker. I thought I got it through 3 minutes. And okay, let me finish that and then I'll get it out of the way. And it is closely linked with in a recent leadership campaign, our leader, our Prime Minister, he took money from a climate change denials and he's in their pocket. So I don't think we can expect much from our Prime Minister. And we have to carry on doing what the Caroline has said. And I support the original motion. I'm sorry, I didn't realise what you were trying to get at, Mr. Speaker.
I've given you some freedom because you're actually speaking against the amendment, which is speaking on the amendment. I know it's a thin line, but I'm... Yep. All right, I now have about 8 speakers. No, I have them in order. Councillor Burford, next. We're taking contributions on the amendment, but of course they can be anti-amendment, can't they? Yes.
Well, I'm not, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not going to not speak on the substantive part of the motion because I think to address the amendment, you have to do that to some extent. But I'm very pleased to support in the principle of the motion as it was proposed by Councillor Healy. I mean, when those of us involved in local politics are busily doing things which we hope will improve people's day-to-day lives, we sometimes have to reflect what overall difference we are making. It can be chastening when we are feeling frustrated about lack of progress, but if we are worried about even a tiny bit about our legacy and what our children and grandchildren will think about our efforts, and this motion before you is the big one. Now, Caroline Healy has referred to the IPCC report last October, and moving on to the issue of the amendment. It set out devastating consequences for our planet of warming over 1.5. It recommended 2030 as the date to become carbon neutral. That's what we're following. Now, I don't want to appear any less passionate than the person who proposed this amendment to 2025, but we have to be, and I'm afraid this is a reality, we have to be realistic about what this council by itself can achieve. Our main target has to be the borough and the influence that we can have on partners, other agencies, businesses that come to this area. That's where the impact has to be. We need to do, within our resources, the maximum that we possibly can to as a council, to lead the way on that. We're not ruling out in this motion making that before 2030. But we do need, if we're going to have the maximum input, we need resources from government to do that with. We cannot do that by ourselves. We want partnership locally, we want partnership nationally to achieve the maximum effect. And we have to take people with us. If we start cutting our statutory services to children and adult social care, that is not going to take people with us. We have got to do everything within our means without letting our people down in this borough. That's why we fixed the date of 2030. We're as passionate as anybody else about climate change and the need to declare an emergency and put our backs behind this. But let's be realistic and let's make sure that this austerity-driven government recognises the same as we do, that this is where the resources have to be directed. That's where we will have the impact. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Bentley next, then Councillor Cassar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to start by saying I fully support the aspirations of the amendment. I see no reason why we can't be aspirational to go to 2025. And I think if you take a look back to the 2002-2003 Scrutiny 2, who were looking at these things, ably chaired by Councillor Miles Hoskins. That particular scrutiny, in the days when scrutiny did something, brought forward an awful lot of recommendations that would have addressed an awful lot of things. It also becomes interesting, having heard the questions on Shorebirch Island, the land at Shorebirch tonight, that should we be developing there, because we're already developing on the old Maxwell site, we're already committed to develop at Allscott, you are going to have no chance of getting carbon neutrality at that pinch point. So therefore, when we start talking about where development should go, we should start thinking about this particular motion.
Councillor Casson.
Hi. I think it's easy to talk about targets and aspirations. It's harder to talk about deadlines. This motion sets a clear deadline for when this can be achieved. I think it's quite interesting that our colleagues on the other side of the room talk about setting bolder challenges, because I'm afraid some of our Liberal Democrat colleagues could have done with bringing bolder challenges to austerity when it was put on the table. Our constituents are suffering. If we had the resources, if we weren't faced with cut after bitter cut, then yes, maybe we could bring deadlines further, but within the resources we have to focus our energies on looking after our constituents who are faced with hunger, with cold, and with all the rest of it as a result of this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilly Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hello? Yeah. Thank you. I want to meet your amendment with a lot of positivity, actually, because actually for the first time we have created a scrutiny committee which is wholly focused on the environment, and a lot of that focus will be in regards to climate change. And I'm looking forward to working with yourself, because I know that you are on that committee, but members from right across the chamber, but also partners from right across the borough, in ensuring that not only do we achieve the commitment we're setting out in the motion tonight, so not only do I want us to be carbon neutral by 2030, but I hope and believe that we can achieve that much sooner. So I think we should, I really welcome your amendment, because actually we're already doing a lot of the things you've set out as aspirations for the council, because we know that this is a priority not only for us but for future generations, and I'm absolutely committed to making sure that scrutiny committee, taking on board Councillor Bentley's comments, that scrutiny committee is effective and delivers real change in the borough.
Thank you. I thought that was very conciliatory. Excellent. Right, I've got 4 more speakers, and then we will go back to Councillor Healy for a reply. So, Councillor Veronica Fletcher. You can remain seated if you wish. No?
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Speaker. I have recycled and reused since I was a child. It is second nature. We are all custodians of the planet. The plastic that is thrown away is devastating to our oceans, rivers, environment, and also the whole of our planet. To resolve the problem is a mammoth task. Getting the message across is vital. Some initiatives are in place in the supermarkets for certain plastic items to be returned at collection points. That is for food wrappings and the little plastic rings that go round cans and such like. And magazines, that's the other problem. You get all this single item magazine cover, and that is a big problem. We can start today in this council by not using the plastic cups, and I'm so pleased to see these glasses. I even brought my own receptacle. And if we are to do what we intend to do, we must lead by example in all things. Even the paper cups that are being used for hot drinks have plastic linings, and therefore they cannot be recycled in the way that we wish them to be. Further, the council uses window envelopes, and you have to, if you want to, like me, recycle old paper, you have to tear that film away so it can be recycled. So I ask that today that we ask the council to, at this point in time, to stop using the envelopes and plastic cups because they can all use their own cups. It is laudable that the aim and aspiration for the borough is to become a certified plastic-free community. But how can this be achieved when our whole infrastructure is independent on plastic industry? Our services rely on plastic for pipings, homes, offices, buildings. And we have to be realistic on what we can do. The statement is ambiguous because it says to be a plastic-free community. And we should work together with all stratas of industry, businesses, communities to remove what is possible to be removed. Further, certain charities and companies are using biodegradable wrappings, and I applaud that as well because it is a step forward. And in the meantime, can we continue to recycle, reuse and avoid wherever possible single-use practice? And I have a slogan: recycle, reuse, remove. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Speaker.
very much for that. Right, I have three more speakers: Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Clare, and then Councillor Ian Fletcher. So, Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support this amendment. It's right that the authority leads by example and has been as ambitious as possible, sets the right example to the borough. I would want to make the point, though, that this motion's about the council's operations, and actually, though the council is a large organisation in Telford and Wrekin, the actual, by far and away, the majority of carbon emissions come from the rest of the economy, the rest of the population, which isn't under council control. That said, though, the council is in a position to make strong influences to that. We have our development proposals, residential and commercial. We also have our planning powers, and I'd call on the council to consider their use of planning powers. As an example, I can say we could condition residential development to have charging points, which isn't a significant change but would contribute to a change. Similarly, we could do similar sort of things for commercial property. The council has a fleet of electric vehicles. We can work with our partners who we procure things to put in a condition that they themselves need electric vehicles to undertake duties and facilities that when they involve the council. And things like our waste. A lot of our waste goes to gasification, which of course is not a good thing. I mean, the council can consider next time that contract comes up, we can look at a zero, or give a commitment to zero gasification of our residential waste. And of course, there's also the action of planting trees. Trees fix carbon, and the council has no end of green spaces around the borough. We can start looking at ways to be planting trees on that green space and using that process to take direct action accordingly. And of course, the communication ability of the council through all our communication channels, we can be endorsing the proposal, encouraging residents and businesses to follow our initiative. Thank you.
Councillor Liz Clare. You can stay seated if you wish. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, thank you. It's harder to get up than it is to get down. Thank you. Can you hear me, Mother? Yeah. I support this amendment for the simple reason that I know if we leave the target at 2030, in a few years' time, some clever person will come along and say, we ain't going to make 2030. Is it all right if it's 2032? I'd rather them come along and say we're not going to make 2025, but we'll make 2027. Years and years ago, when plastic was first introduced, everybody thought what a wonderful innovation this was. It's taken a long time to realise how difficult it is to get rid of. You've only got to look at our agendas tonight. What's going through the middle? A plastic keeping the book together. It's going to be quite difficult for us to actually look and decide what we can or what we can't do without. But yet I'm fully behind 2025 because I recognise that when it actually happens, it'll probably be 2027, but at least that's better than 2030. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Final speaker, Councillor Ian Fletcher, then I'm going to ask Councillor Carolyn Healy to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I fully support the motion and the amendment, and I think that we should be extremely radical in making sure that we combat climate change by what we do. Now, the most difficult area is, of course, the petrol engines and the diesel engines that are going around this area. So I think we should consider banning all lorries, all buses, all cars from the borough of Telford and Wrekin. That'll help us. That'll really help us meet the targets that you're signing up to. And the other thing is essential car user allowances. We shouldn't promote car use by members of staff, nor should car allowances be paid to members or councillors on expenses. That should be stopped. That's going to help promote and reach the target. And the other thing, you could also consider, and this for your security, your scrutiny thing, workplace charging on our workplace car parks, so that people coming to work in the council, if they want to use a car, they've got to pay for it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Right, that will set some hairs running. Right, now I'm going back to Councillor Healy. Do you wish to reply to the debate? Right. On the amendment.
This is on the, yes. I'm actually really heartened by the debate we've had because it shows there's a huge amount of passion for addressing this issue. So that, to me, means that we can all work together in doing this. There's also a huge amount of ideas and suggestions, and that's exactly what we want, because we do want to work cross-party. As I said in my proposal, as Gilly has mentioned, that will be largely through scrutiny. We do want to kind of do that and bring all those ideas together. But if I can just pick up on a couple of points. 2030, as Councillor Cassar said, is a deadline. It is not a target. If we can meet this earlier, we will, but at the moment we do not know our baseline. We need to assess that first. We need to meet together. We need to start to pull together the action plan. You will note that we will be bringing back a report in January of next year that will give us a clearer picture of where we are, and therefore for me at this stage, because we want to take everyone with us, because we want to do this in a way that does not disadvantage our most vulnerable, because we could easily make policy decisions focusing on climate change. I know it's you know, if we don't get this right, then we're going to disadvantage everybody, but we clearly want to protect people in the short term as well, and so we want to get it right, and so we want to sort of work with a 2030 as a deadline but not a target, and we will be ambitious, and if we can bring it forward we will. In terms of some of the other issues raised, you know, things like development, housing bill standards, having more carbon neutral building, greener communities, and I think there's so much we can do in our local planning and our policies, but equally we also need support from national government and national government policy, and I really want everyone across this room to support us in doing that, in lobbying our MPs to make those changes, because if we try to put too many demands on developers, they simply claim viability, go to an inspector, and we get overruled. So, you know, we have to try and do that too, and lobby government, and I hope that colleagues across the floor will support us in that. With regards to suggestions around tree planting, we of course have the Telford Woods project where we are looking to do just that, so I'm glad that members are in support of that. Partnership was mentioned. We do, as it says in the motion clearly states we will work in partnership with a range of bodies across the borough, but not just across the borough. We know we have to reach out beyond the borough boundary as well. There are a number of organisations that work across the whole of Shropshire and across the whole region, and we need to find the right ways to work with all of those partners so that we deliver on this. So we take on board the suggestions in the amendment. I feel we sufficiently covered them in our original motion. I think 2030 is the right deadline to aim for, and therefore I'm opposing the amendment.
Right, thank you. Right, we're now going to take a vote on the amendment as put forward by Councillor Jank and seconded. All those in favour of that amendment? Right, shall we count? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I make it. Could you, Tracy? It's tabled before you, and it's a full page of A4. Page 2 of 2. Yeah, it's been tabled. Right.
So the original's on one side.
Yeah, we're now halfway through the vote. All right. So, what did I do first?
16, 4.
16 in favour. All those against. All right. I think it's failed. All right. We now come on to the original motion.
Continue debating the original motion.
Right. Councillor Hoskin indicated to speak, and I had to stop him. I've now got Councillor Nelson as well. So I invite Councillor Hoskin to speak, please.
I won't at this juncture.
Sorry?
I won't at this juncture.
All right, thank you. Councillor Nelson. This is on the original motion, the substantive.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I sponsored the first climate emergency resolution in this borough. I've supported Sustainable Newport and its predecessors for over 12 years. I even rode a bike to work for a while. So I'll claim I care. Others will do and have done, and that is good. I support the first sentence of this motion, which was also the first sentence of the amendment. This council resolves to declare a climate emergency. Actually, in this issue, awareness is all. It's the public utterance, the public commitment that we make which leads the public. We face, and the word's already been used, an existential crisis. I had to look it up. It means a threat to human existence. The global climate has been changing for over 12,000 years. It seems very likely mankind has recently accelerated this change. Our own cabinet from the previous administration reminded us of the temperature rise post-industrialisation of 1 degree. His words at the time were 1%, which actually wouldn't have been so bad. It would have been crass to correct it at the time, and it was not corrected. This is a challenge to mankind and to the natural world we tend to forget we are part of. Actually, we need to do nothing if we choose. All we need to do is wait. It will come to us. Rising temperatures, rising sea levels, rising migration. We do nothing, these will happen anyway. Our job is to lead mitigation to ensure humanity prospers despite changes. And I understand the references Labour have put in terms of which particular groups in society. I'm very glad that Councillor Healy qualified that and said the threat is to everyone. And, of course, to limit and reverse the damage we have already done to soil quality, biodiversity, air pollution, greenhouse gases, plastics in the ocean, microplastics in not just fish but our own bodies. The list goes on. This threat is a threat to all of us. This body has no grounds for complacency. We are, as a council, very late to the party, no pun. We may be individually, and the age 75 has already been mentioned here, where many of us expect to avoid the worst. We won't be here. Our children will. Their children definitely will. We have responsibility for action in our own generation. I believe our best and most effective actions are where we work together. My climate emergency resolution in Newport was in fact joint sponsored with Labour and the Lib Dems, indeed Councillor Yanker, at my insistence. So far, the olive branch of cross-party working has been thrown in our faces. I'm very pleased to see Councillor Healy's words this evening, and in the face of dedicated volunteers. That's not wise. I say support the motion. Partners must include the groups in this chamber and must be Shropshire-wide. I call on Labour to be statesmen. Work with us all impartially.
Please, thank you. Councillor Hoskin, you indicated, do you wish to comment? Councillor Hoskin, do you wish to comment? No, sir. No, you okay. Right, in the absence of anyone... Councillor White.
We've known that this planet has been in trouble for many, many years. And yet you can voice one child and then followed up by many children shouting up, save us, save our planet. And it's taken that time to do something. Otherwise, we wouldn't be discussing this if it wasn't national news and kids were there. We've got to be honest. Gilly is chair of the Environmental Scrutiny Committee, and it will be up to every single one of us here to help, support, put your ideas there, and if you really care about what you're saying here tonight, is be a part of it. Give forward your suggestion, give them the support, because we can't bully people into actually taking climate change seriously. We can't demand it, and we can't rule it. What we can do is encourage it. We can make people feel part of it, and it won't be done in 5 years because we will not be able to bully employers to actually make massive investments in the way they're changing their industry. We can only try and influence and persuade, and that's what we should be doing, and that's why we're setting this target of 2030. It's important that that happens, and as far as I'm concerned, you and we can do the best thing is actually by working together. And we've talked about cross-party thing being thrown back in the face. Rubbish. This is about what we feel as together is a realistic target, how we can do things better. We can't do it, as I say, by bullying. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I now put the original motion... No, I've not got... Does Carolyn have...
She does have a right to reply.
Oh, you have a further right to reply. Sorry, it's not on my crib list.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, I am really pleased with the debate that we've had, and I hope that the enthusiasm and passion in the room tonight doesn't dissipate tomorrow, that tomorrow and next week and the week after we crack on with the job, because it's too important not to, and that we do all work together. Just a couple of points again. Councillor Nelson mentioned some of the activities in Newport, and I think it's important to say the words have been said that this Borough Council needs to be a leader on this issue, and I agree, but we also need to be a learner, and I'm really happy that we can learn from the activities in our communities across the borough and across the country and across the globe, that we learn from others and bring all the best forward so that we can do as much as we can on this issue. There was also reference to about working Shropshire-wide. Clearly, there are going to be on some issues where we do need to work Shropshire-wide and we need to work very closely. There are other issues where we'll need to work much more regionally as well. In terms of what the shape of in the motion talks about a partnership, the shape of that partnership has yet to be determined, and that, again, will be part of the cross-party work. I think because we are very different to Shropshire, and because some of our key partners are relevant purely to Telford rather than the whole of Shropshire, there will be times when it will be important to work with partners within the borough. There will be other times when it will be important to work with partners that cut across the whole of Shropshire, and there will be times to work with partners across the region. So it's about horses for courses, depending the issue that we're talking with, the action that we're looking at that particular time. But ultimately, it is about working together, and I hope that once we take the vote now, that it will be a unanimous vote in favour of this, and that we do declare a climate emergency.
Thank you. Right, I now put it to the vote. All those in favour of the original motion? That is agreed.
It's unanimous.
No, it's not unanimous. I don't think Greenaway voted. I didn't see her voting. Right, we now move on to the final item, I think, which probably should only take a few minutes. All right. Councillor Bentley, would you like to move your motion, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is with pleasure that I stand yet again tonight, even though I know I could sit.
No, you can stand.
Yeah, thank you. What I am disappointed in, of course, is we had to have an amendment that was politicised in this, because that wasn't the agenda at all about this motion. So I'll just read it as it is. The members of this authority are united in their support of all residents aged 75 and above to have free TV licences, irrespective of financial status.
Is Councillor Burrell?
Thank you, Speaker. I'm happy to second, and I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Offland, you wish to move an amendment?
Mr. Speaker.
Go on.
The Council's constitution says that any amendment should not significantly alter the gist of the original motion. By this amendment, it significantly changes the direction of the original motion, and I feel should be ruled out of order.
What's your... Okay, I'm advised by our legal officer that it doesn't, so thank you for that. Right. Councillor Offland. Sorry. It's not on. Yeah, it's on now.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, Council, moving amendment to the motion. In 1999, Gordon Brown introduced a free TV licence for the over 75s. Yes, you have it, a Labour government. In 2015, as part of the Tory austerity plan, the Tories decided to phase out the funding for the free TV licences by June 2020. Yes, you have it, a Tory government, leaving the BBC to pick up the bill. These Tory austerity cuts affect the most vulnerable, but also the generations that fought for our future generations and have paid taxes all their life. Yes, paid taxes. There is currently 1.3 million people who have not claimed pension credit because they are either unaware or unable to claim. The continued Tory austerity cuts to services put barriers in place for the most vulnerable. It is clear that those unable to add to the profitability of the establishment have no relevance to the Tory party. They are being forced into absolute poverty. They are being treated with utter contempt. Those of us who care are forced to watch the evidence of this every day. The most vulnerable should be protected. Instead, we see a Tory decision attacking pensioners' mental health and adding to their increased social isolation. We have 2.2 million pensioners in poverty. That's 18%. The figure provided by the House of Commons report on poverty in the UK. It is not a pleasant read, I assure you. The direct effect of Tory austerity, poverty. Aren't we the 5th richest country? The government should be ashamed instead of using spin to blame others. And now, like I said before, those who care. Could you imagine, okay, I spend my time looking after the most vulnerable, okay? Going into somebody only having a jacket potato to eat, no beans, no butter. That's today, even with a free TV licence. What will that person do next June? TV or food? More social isolation? Yes, that's right. This is happening right now in Telford and Wrekin under this Tory austerity plan, isolating the people who gave so much to our society. I will leave this with you. This Labour Council, this Labour government will continue to fight the decision with everything we have. You can't means test for social isolation, and you can't means test for social loneliness, a total miserable existence which leads to so many to depression and premature death. This is not what Labour want for the most vulnerable in our community. I, for one, will not allow this to happen. I move.
Right, Councillor Angela McClements, the second amendment.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. I disagree with Councillor Bentley. I absolutely think that this motion had to be amended, and also to hear the laughter from across the floor, I think quite is appalling, quite honestly. Now look, I'm sure we can all be united in our support of all residents aged 75 and above to have free TV licences, irrespective of financial status. And I would hope, therefore, as Councillor Offlin mentioned, that we can all also be united in thanking Gordon Brown in his 1999 budget for introducing free TV licences for over 75s. He also agreed that the cost of providing the universal benefit should be paid by the Department of Work and Pensions to the BBC to ensure that the broadcaster's budget was not hit. But what has happened instead is that this government has had the breathtaking gall to blame the BBC for this mess by passing the buck onto them, in essence, doing the government's cost-cutting dirty work. So let's understand the history of this. In 2015, the Conservative government struck a deal under which a subsidy would be phased out, with the broadcaster having to shoulder the cost from 2020 onwards. Then they later gave the BBC responsibility for deciding what to do about the freebie, meaning any unpopular decisions on charging had to be made by the BBC. Yet in their 2017 election manifesto, the Tory government promised to maintain free TV licences for over 75s. That promise has now been broken. How cunning, how nasty is that? But no real surprise from a Tory government who simply do not care. The BBC is not the Department of Works and Pensions. Public broadcasters should not be responsible for social policy. You simply cannot means test for social isolation. Our poorest pensioners, 1.3 million of them, are now facing a new annual bill they simply cannot afford because, though eligible for pension credit, they don't actually get it, and as Councillor Offlin stated, either because they are unaware or unable to claim. So let's be clear about where the blame lies, and that's why the amendment is put forward tonight. This government need to take back responsibility for funding free TV licences. They need to keep to their 2017 manifesto commitment and reverse this deplorable decision immediately. I second.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Thompson.
Well, I'm agreeing to support our amendment. The BBC is an excellent media. Drama, education, news, sports and music. For many people, it's the lifeline. Perhaps the only people in a day they ever see. And this is purely cuts again. They don't even see the carers, or they come in for a few moments, so they're lonely. The only support is the TV. This is cuts by this Conservative government. What are we going to get next? Winter fuel going? The bus passes going? We even have a Conservative councillor tonight saying our staff can pay for car parking. So in the civic office in Wellington, the library, the swimming baths, the staff and the public would have to pay. Well, our importance is they will never be charged in Wellington and the Wrekin and Telford area. This is pure cuts by the Conservatives and by Mr Johnson. Let's scrap these cuts, and can he also scrap the intention of giving increases to the well-off? Thank you.
Councillor Ian Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thought when I came to this meeting, I saw this motion that I wouldn't be allowed to speak because I'm in a household that actually qualifies for a free TV licence, but I've been advised that I'm allowed to speak. Why I disagree with the amendment is that it's not completely factually correct in that it says that the Conservative government is stopping the free licence. That is not true. It's the BBC or the Blair Corporation or the Brown Broadcasting Corporation. As I'm now retired and mature, I do actually watch TV. We have a Digibox, so we have about 78 channels or more, so I can see all of them. There's only one that I actually pay to watch. That's the BBC. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, whatever it is. But the programmes there are quite good. I do feel that the BBC, instead of spending large amounts on inflated salaries for certain presenters, should actually provide what they agreed to provide, which was free TV licences. I speak against the amendment, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Bentley to reply to the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because the original ethos of the original motion was just about protecting the vulnerable and such like. I think, seeing as we've had a few history lessons here, maybe members who don't know the history, TV licence was introduced to supplement the war effort. That's a fact. Which war? Second World War. So, TV licence doesn't give you the ability to watch the BBC, because you can pick up BBC on Sky. TV licences are there to enable you to receive a signal, not a programme. The BBC, in reality, is now archaic and should be funding itself.
True.
Therefore, I cannot support this amendment or the attack on the Conservative government for making them responsible for wanting the BBC to be self-financing, which it should be. And then we probably all wouldn't need a TV licence, would we?
You're advertising. Right, I now put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? Right, that's quite a lot. All those against? Yes, the amendment is clearly carried. Okay. Right. So the amendment now becomes the substantive motion. Unless there are any other further comments, I'm happy to put the substantive motion to the vote.
With respect, Chair,
Burrell, yes.
I'm just wondering when I get my opportunity to second the original motion.
You wish to speak? All right, yes.
That's gone. So you can
Oh, it's gone.
As-
to the amended
You can
motion.
speak now to the substantive motion.
Great. I'll reserve the right then to speak at the end then, sir. Thank you.
Be the end, I think. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick point, really. We did so well on the first two amendments. They really meant something. I think the problem with this amendment and motion is that all we'll get from this is a strongly worded letter to someone. And I wonder why we even, I understand the need to help people, but why we actually debate these things sometimes. But I must say I'm deeply saddened to see any motion and amendment cause cross-party difficulties again, as it has done. And we really should try a lot harder on this working together, because we can do it. We should do it, and when a motion comes forward like this, it should be questioned, because all it will do is bring more, we did that, you did that, and this is just simply not what the people out there want to see or hear. Thank you.
Right. Is there anybody else wish to speak? Oh, sorry, yes.
She has a right of reply, because it's the substantive motion.
All right, so Councillor Offland, you have the right of reply, which I presume would come at the end. So if you can, I'm hoping we're coming to the end. All right. Councillor Burrell, do you want to take your opportunity now? And then Councillor Offland can do the fine winding up.
On the 7th month of 2015, the Director General of the BBC, Tony Hall, said of the licence fee settlement, "We have secured the right deal for the BBC in difficult economic circumstances for the country. This agreement secures the long-term funding for a strong BBC over the next charter period. The BBC has agreed to take on the costs for free licence fees for over 75s and will take on the policy. In the 7th month of 2019, the Director General of the BBC, Tony Hall, said it would not be right to maintain free licences for all over 75s in perpetuity, given the very profound impact that would have on many BBC services. These two statements empirically demonstrate on whose shoulders the responsibility for reimposing the telly tax on 3 million old-age pensioners lies, as identified by Labour Member of Parliament Tracy Brabin, who has said, "I campaigned against this, so disappointed the BBC have taken this decision, especially when loneliness can have such an impact on elderly. This is an extra tax on older folk who might not have the cash to pay for it." This decision was made by the BBC, breaking a commitment made by the corporation to the government in 2015 and upon which the 2017 election manifesto was constructed. The BBC had a range of options in their cost-saving quest. They could have conducted a cost-benefit analysis on the salaries of the 64 presenters who earn between £160,000 and £1,750,000 per annum. The BBC may have tightened up their asset management practice after it became clear that over the last 5 years they have lost mobile phones and laptops worth £550,000, which by itself could have funded 3,500 free TV licences. The first combined radio and TV licence fee was introduced at the rate of £2 by the Labour government in June 1946, meaning that over 75s have paid the licence fee their entire working lives. The BBC needs to take a long look at itself, refocus its priorities, and use the powers in its possession to stick to its commitments and remove the burden of this tax off the shoulders of those who, through their working life, have contributed so much to the BBC and wider society. This amendment seeks to be political, as one may expect, but in their zeal to attack the government, the authors have allowed factual inaccuracies to flower unabated. Therefore, I cannot support this motion.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Councillor Offland to take her right of reply, and then we will move to the vote.
Mr. Speaker, Council, I want to come back on a few points raised. Firstly, I think you missed the facts, okay, that were pointed out. Pure facts, okay, and let it be known, I look after the most vulnerable. I see this every day. I see what Tory austerity is doing. So, if we sit here and allow this to happen to the most vulnerable within our community, then on your head be it, okay? Because I will not stand for the most vulnerable to be left with no food over a TV licence. They have given so much to our society, and I don't know how many times I have to say. Also, Mr. Speaker, can I ask for a recorded vote, please? Thank you.
How many do I need? 10? Yeah, that's sufficient. It'll be a recorded vote. So we're voting on the motion as... Hang on. That's what I was saying, as amended. Yeah. So I'm right.
You are.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always right.
It's on the table.
Right, so we're voting on the motion as amended. Yeah, thank you. All right, can you read them out, please, Tracy? And Jane.
Councillor S. Bentley. Councillor T. Blundell. Councillor M. Boylan. Councillor A. Burford. Councillor S. Burrell. Councillor Kalia. Councillor Eric Carter. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Kassar. Councillor Clare. Councillor Cook. Councillor Davis. Councillor Dugmore's not here. Councillor Eads not here. Councillor Arnold England. Councillor Nathan England's not here. Councillor Evans. Councillor Ian Fletcher. Councillor Veronica Fletcher. Councillor Jane Greenaway. Councillor C. Healy. Councillor V. Holt. Councillor M. Hoskin. Councillor Yanker. Councillor Jawar. Councillor Jones. Councillor Kiernan. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Loveridge is not here. Councillor McClements. Councillor Metta. Councillor Middleton. Councillor Murray. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Offland. Councillor Overton. Councillor Pinter's not here. Councillor Gilly Reynolds. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Steve Reynolds. Councillor Hilda Rhodes. Councillor Sahota. Councillor Scott. Councillor Jackie Seymour. Councillor Charles Smith. Councillor Malcolm Smith. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Tomlinson, Karen Tomlinson. Councillor Bill Tomlinson. Councillor Chris Turley. Councillor Watlin's not here. Councillor Derek White. And Councillor David Wright.
Yes, the motion is passed. I thank you for your attendance and declare the meeting closed.